a government, the economists argue, that's absolutely what you can do. They call it cannibalizing, right? They cannibalize productive assets in order to fund the war machine. And these productive assets take a whole bunch of forms, right? For example, a lot of payments and investments that would otherwise be spent driving Russia's economy are actually social welfare payments, right? These are payments to the families of dead and wounded soldiers. These are pensioners. And military payments alone represent about 4% of all consumer spending by Russians. That's pretty scary. Imagine if you had so many dead and wounded that 1 in every $25 spent in your economy was done by wounded soldiers and their families. It would be, again, a sign of a broken economy that's spending way more than it's actually making, right? And you could see it, right? 60% of Russian physicians say that their salaries are insufficient to meet basic needs. Let that sink in. Again, Russian doctors, highly trained doctors, say we don't make enough to buy the basics: rent, heat, water, food. 80% of physicians work multiple jobs to make ends meet. So again, if you aren't one of these soldiers, you see that the salaries they're making are probably high, but they're not as high as the real inflation rate, the things that Russians actually need to function day to day. Of course, they also talk about the fact that Russia's having a massive brain drain. Because when Putin announced his first wave of mobilization, basically every Russian who could scrounge together $3,000 got on a flight out of the country, and they haven't come back. So again, physicians, where their salaries, again, should be at an all-time high because there's so few remaining in Russia that they still can't meet their basic needs. So this is all the data they talk about. IT workers have had their salaries in real terms decreased by 25%. Again, that's in part because of an exodus of multinational companies, and it's also because, again, while their salaries rise, they're not rising as fast as inflation, meaning functionally they are, the number on their paycheck is greater, but it buys them less things in the Russian economy. Again, when we look and we ask, okay, well, this is just an op-ed, right? Maybe they're just not really, things are fine. But let's look at the chart here. This is the 5-year chart, by the way, guys. Let's see if we can make this just a little bit bigger so we can really see it. Okay, here we go. Right, so we look at the 5-year chart. Now you can see that in the initial outset of the invasion and the initial outset of Western sanctions against Russia, the ruble, you couldn't give away a ruble. This is how many rubles it takes to buy $1, right? You couldn't give away the ruble. And then the Russian central bank really fought tirelessly and stabilized it. In fact, the ruble was never more valuable against the US dollar than in June of 2024. You can see what's happened over the last 2 years is that the ruble was rising in price, and then again in October, it seems like the Russian central bank managed to stabilize it. But now there's a third surge, and it's moving faster than we've almost ever seen, short of the actual sanctions themselves. And this is now seeing the ruble climb from 84 rubles buys you a buck to 97 rubles buys you a buck. And I think it's pretty clear. There's actually some rumors that Putin has said he doesn't want the ruble to exceed 100. But there's limits to how possible these sort of things are. And that's one of the real problems. And you can see that, again, prior to the invasion, right, 2021, you're looking at about 74 was about the healthy exchange rate of rubles to dollars. Now, again, prior to COVID in 2019, you're looking at about 63, 64. So in those 4 years, you can see that you're talking about a 30 to 35% increase. Again, when you look at things over the last year, you can see that they defended the ruble against the dollar and other currencies, right? Defending it all the way down to 84. and now it's just not clear that they can continue to. And when I say defend it, what happens is a lot of times in these countries, their central bank will actually buy or sell currencies. They'll sell rubles and buy yuan or euros in order to sort of prop up their currency. And Russia has to play additional games to make this happen. Now, we're going to talk about what the other thing that Russia needs to sustain its economy, oil, and how, man, they are in trouble in the oil department too. But before I do that, of course, if you want to support this channel, keep me independent. I don't take money from governments. I don't take money from shady Russian media companies. Instead, I rely on you guys, the audience, to support me. And you can do that over on combatvetnews.com. This is my site. It's my version of Patreon, where we have a whole bunch of different tiers that get you access to twice weekly uncensored combat footage straight from the front lines. Sometimes it's as little as a day old, and it's uncensored GoPros, drone footage. It gives us insight we can't get anywhere else. But if you really appreciate it, you can get access to the weekly Q&As, the shout-outs, even the by name recognition, depending on your tier. So the link is in the description. Check it out, combatvetnews.com. Keep me independent. I appreciate you guys. Okay, so another economist from Johns Hopkins has, again, said that the real inflation rate is about 27%, and the ruble is just indefensible, right? So we're looking at a growing consensus among economists that the ruble is really in trouble. But don't worry, Putin says, we have our secret weapon, Gazprom, right? The ability of Russian state-owned or state-affiliated companies who are heavily taxed can still pull out crude oil from the ground and sell it. And for much of this conflict, that's been true because Putin is a brilliant strategist. Like, don't kid yourself. The man knows what's up. And he knew that when he invaded Ukraine, it would cause a spike in gas prices because nobody really knew what was going to happen to the price of a barrel of oil. It meant that as long as Putin could continue to sell oil, that he would be able to make a lot of money. And you could see that that's exactly what happened, right? He invades Ukraine, and it was climbing, and then suddenly it spikes. $115 a barrel, $118 a barrel. And then slowly, things start to look a little better, right? We realize that oil and gas production is not actually going to decrease, but thanks to the price cap, oil's become pretty plentiful and pretty cheap, right? Down to $75, $80, $90 a barrel, right? The global price. And you can literally see, this looks a lot like the ruble chart, doesn't it? Right? And it's not an accident. It's because the number one thing that Russia does with rubles, number one thing that the global economy does with rubles is buy Russian oil. And so you have this problem. And that is what's happened over the last, we're going to say, 3 months or so. You could see that the weekly oil price was at 81 in July, $81 a barrel. Right? October 11th, it was down to 74. But now, it's even worse. It's $69 a barrel. So it's nearly a 9% drop from literally just 5 days ago. This is a huge problem. And you can see right here. Look, October 14th, boom, gets crushed once and now has been on a steady decline. So that means if you're Russia, you have a huge problem on your hands. You can't sell oil for more than $60 a barrel. And initially, that meant that there was a real discount to be had, right? And they could still sell oil to Europe, which is insane to me. But Europe has its inflationary crisis, and we're going to argue against it, I guess, right? If only the Europeans had shut down on the and so, but you could see that things are looking a little problematic for oil prices. A lot of these European economies in the U.S. inflict inflation. We say we don't need to keep oil cheap. And remember, if you have, the closer it gets to the oil price cap, countries have this decision. They say, listen, I can run up against U.S. sanctions, or I can pay and buy Russian oil, or I can just buy oil from literally anyone else, from the Saudis, from the Venezuelans, from the U.S. I can buy oil from wherever I want. And so, as you reduce the price, Russian oil looks less and less appealing, which means that Gazprom's revenues, which already are at all-time lows, they actually ran a loss last year, they're going to run an even bigger loss, right? And again, you're running a loss. What happens? And by the way, and the Ukrainians, they keep bombing Russian oil facilities, and it's going to get harder and harder and more expensive to repair those facilities again and again and again. And all of this is adding to the situation that is cooking the Russian economy. You can see the U.S.'s ally Saudi Arabia has finally come around and said, listen, we are going to ramp up crude production because we want to undercut Russia's revenues. Right? This is according to Politico. Riyadh is saying, listen, we used to be saying, hey, we want to try to keep oil at $100 a barrel, but we can't compete with Russia, who's, again, selling it at 60. And so they said, you know what? We want to make sure that we are the global winner in oil, and we're going to do a favor to our friends in the United States. And we are going to start to pump out oil style. And so sure enough, right, if oil prices fall $20 from or $20 from their October 1st prices, Russia would lose $20 billion in revenue, 1% of the country's GDP. For the record, guys, they spend about 6% of their GDP on military affairs. So that would take out 6% of Russia's war economy. And that's just a $20 fall in prices. Bear in mind, guys, we've seen, something akin to that already. So if it's right now about 69, so it was 89. Let's see, it was about in April. Maybe let's see if we get the 1 year chart. Yeah, so basically if it drops down from 86 down to 60, or 86 down to 66, that is going to punish the Russian economy. And it's going to make things even worse because, again, if no one wants rubles to buy Russian oil, that means that rubles are going to become even less valuable. And Russians are going to have to spend more of their hard-earned rubles just to buy food. And if there's one thing we know, it's that if you want, people will tolerate a lot of autocratic mismanagement in their country. But once they can't feed their kids, all bets are off. Anyway, guys, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to our final tier members like Bill Collier, Robert Colbert, Gaius Martin, Gina Cuesta, Chris Gorsuch, Francis Arias, Mail 90, as well as all of our lieutenant tier members. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate y'all so much, and I will see you next time.
Essentially, in the last couple of years, since a new year, we've discovered this definitely towards
Race starts in 5 minutes.
Yes.
A class of objects
That don't make sense.
that don't make sense.
Maybe there are just these other objects in the solar system that are doing the same thing. It's just we never noticed them because we've seen them.
Hence, dark comedy.
Yes.
Two more.
This is Star Talk. Neil deGrasse Tyson here, astrophysicist. Got Chuck, nice to meet Chuck.
What's up, Yes, we are trying to sell it right now. So if
It's
you're
all done.
it's done. If you're at Amazon or Netflix,
Good luck with that. Yeah, good luck with that. You don't get to talk about that.
what's that? Sounds like a
Like dark comics.
dark comet.
Dark comics. I've seen the term, and I don't know how they all define it.
Okay,
My specialty is like galaxies and cosmology, and like
that's just we can't be bothered with comets, can we?
dark comics. One of the most experts on this subject.
Yeah.
Or Seligman. Daryl. Welcome to Star Talk.
Yeah.
So you are an assistant professor at Michigan State University.
Yeah, we started.
Oh, that's true with PhD and your first tenure-track job.
Yes, exactly.
So he's brand new.
Just birthed by the National Science Foundation. Look at that.
So the National Science Foundation has what's called a postdoctoral fellowship, where once you get your PhD, it's money you just do be there if you immediately went right into the communion. So, Darryl, what was the title of your thesis, if you can remember? Because I barely remember the title of my thesis. Because there's a lot of words and a subtitle, but it's about comets.
Well, it was actually about interstellar objects.
Interstellar objects. Okay, well, let's start there. For the longest while, we presumed there was stuff flying between the stars.
That's right.
But we never saw one. Because occasionally, we expect them to pay us a visit.
Or at least pass through.
But that's what I mean. Yeah. They just come in and go out. And we've been looking for centuries.
Yeah.
And your main topic of study is something that doesn't exist yet.
Oh, well, no, I was pretty lucky because when I was a third-year graduate student, I was doing just pure fluid dynamics for astrophysics. And then as a third-year graduate student, I moved to physics.
So just to be clear, so a fluid to an astrophysicist is what? A gas. So liquids and gases are both fluids to a physicist. Right. Okay. So then why Oumuamua have anything to do with fluid?
Well, it doesn't have too much of a fluid dynamics to me, but it was such an exciting opportunity that we just kind of dropped everything else. Yes. We dropped everything else we were doing and started looking at that. So I don't know how close you were following back in 2017, but it was one of the most exciting times for astronomy. Basically, this thing got discovered, and it was also moving super fast. It was only a couple of weeks from these telescopes, and then upwards of 3 or 4 weeks.
Currently
Would you
P3 up for
expect it to be
qualifying.
moving fast if it's coming in from interstellar space?
Yes, you would expect it to be moving fast.
And
But
why would it be faster than anything else?
so, because the planets are all moving in the same direction around the sun, Oumuamua comes in and it's coming from a totally different direction, and then it looks like it's moving really fast compared to our motion.
Because we're going in opposite directions
Yes.
to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So, Oumuamua, we found this thing.
Yes.
Called it Oumuamua, which sounds Hawaiian.
Yes, it is
I think
Hawaiian.
was it discovered by a telescope in
Yes.
Hawaii?
So it was picked up by PanSTARRS, which is a telescope in Hawaii that is funded by the Department of Defense, and they're looking for near-Earth objects.
Okay.
So small kilometer-scale objects that some of which, yes,
kilometer scale.
small,
Yeah.
yes.
This will knock you on your ass.
Yeah, exactly.
So some of those objects are potentially hazardous. So it's very important that we find them with ample time to do something.
If they're going to hit us,
Exactly.
Ample time to kiss your ass goodbye. You need enough time to get that
Right.
out of the way. But so it seems to me, from what you say, PanSTARRS had no expectation of finding interstellar objects, but it has the ability to do so regardless. Is that a fair statement?
Well, that is true, but I think they originally designed PanSTARRS hoping to find interstellar objects. Because for the last couple of decades, I mean, we know the solar system has ejected a good amount of material in interstellar objects. So it's not much of a stretch to imagine that other planetary systems would also be ejecting material, and we would see them, and the only difference is you just see a small body, but it comes across the night sky and looks hyperbolic.
Causes the
But
subject to
the
make
fact
his
that
own
we
mind a
hadn't seen
blank.
any
In other
trying
words,
to
he
get
stops the
units on
resisting
number
forces of the other person's thought by turning all his thoughts to a center. Your spirit can, and does frequently, go from your body to other places during sleep. It is then still connected with it by this thread of exceedingly fine element. This can be drawn out to a great distance. This power of the spirit so to leave the body accounts for the phenomenon of persons being seen in two places far distant at the same time. It is the spirit that is seen by some clairvoyant eye. It is the double, the doppelganger of the German, the wraith of the Scotch. The spirit may even be far from the body just previous to the body's death. It is only the feeble supply of life sent it through the connecting thread which causes the involuntary throes of dissolution. These are not as painful as they seem. The real self, the spirit, even then may be unaware of the deathbed scene. It may go to some person, possibly at a distance, to whom it is much attracted, and thereby is solved the mystery of the apparitions, seen by distant friends, of persons whose deaths at or about the time of such appearances were not heard of until months after. Sometimes people, during periods of sickness, fall unconsciously into a state where the spirit leaves the body without snapping the threads of life. The body's trance has then been mistaken for its real death, and the body has been buried alive. The spirit has been compelled to return to its body in the coffin. The thread could only be severed after such return. Your real being is ever sending out, with each thought, a fine electric ray or filament representing so much of your life, your force, your vitality, and reaching to the object, place, or person to which such thought is sent, be it 6 feet or thousands of miles from your body. Your thought is your real strength. When you lift a weight, you put your thought on the muscle that lifts. The heavier the weight, the more of your thought do you put on it. If, in so lifting, the part of your thought is turned in some other direction, if someone talks to you, if something frightens or annoys you, a part of your strength or thought leaves you. It goes to whatever has taken away a part of your attention from lifting. It is mind, thought, spirit that uses the muscle to lift, as we use a rope to pull up a weight. There is no lifting or working without intelligence. Intelligence, thought, mind, and spirit mean about the same thing. It does not matter, in order to give strength, whether the spirit, when once called together, be near the body or at a distance from it. So that it brings its thoughts together, be it far from its body or near it, it is strong, and when it takes possession of your body and wakes it up, it is able to use the body with its full strength. But the spirit may remain scattered all night. It may never be able to bring its forces together at any time. It may be living, as many now are, with its thought always in advance of the act it is now doing or trying to do. It is walking the body and sending out its thought force to the place it hurries to. It is writing with the body and thinking of something else. When it frets, it sends out force to the thing fretted about. These states of mind, acts, thought, and useless waste of force become at last so confirmed in habit that the spirit may lose all power of bringing all its strength together. In this state it gathers no strength by night or day. Sleeplessness comes of the difficulty of the spirit to bring itself to a center and collect its forces. Insanity comes of the total inability of the spirit to focus its thoughts. The permanent cure for sleeplessness must commence in the daytime. You must drill your mind to put its whole thought on the act you are now doing. If you tie your shoe, think shoe and nothing else. Then you bring yourself to a center and collect your forces. If you tie your shoe and think of what you are doing by the next hour, you are sending needlessly half of your forces from yourself. You are in reality trying to do two things at once. You do neither well. You are scattering your spirit on as many things as you think of while tying the shoe. You are cultivating the bad habit of scattering your force until such habit becomes involuntary. You are making it more and more difficult for your spirit to collect itself together. By so doing, you make it more difficult for the spirit to return with strength to its body in the morning or to leave it at night. You can get no healthy sleep at night unless your spirit does withdraw from its body. Sleeplessness means simply that your spirit cannot leave its body. What you call dreams are realities. Your spirit away from your body at night goes to and sees persons and places. To some of these you may never have gone with your body. You remember on the body's awakening very little of what you have seen. What you do remember is mixed pell-mell together. That is because your memory of the body can hold but a little of what is grasped by the memory of your spirit. You have two memories, one trained and adapted to the life of your body, the other of your spirit. Had you known of the life and power of your spirit from infancy and recognized it as a reality, the memory of your spirit would have been so trained that it would remember all of its own life and bring it back to you on the awakening of the body. But as you have been taught to regard even your spirit as a myth, so you make of its memory a myth. Were a human being taught from infancy to discredit the evidence of any of its senses, then that sense would be blunted and almost destroyed. Let all associated with a child for years deliberately set to work and tell it that they could not see the sky or houses, fields, or other familiar objects at hand, and with none allowed to break the delusion, that child's eyesight as well as its judgment would be seriously affected. We are similarly taught to deny all the senses and powers of our spirits, or rather the real powers of ourselves, of which the senses of the body are a faint counterpart. Substantially, we are taught that we are nothing but bodies, This is equivalent to telling the carpenter that he has nothing but the hammer he uses. If in a so-called dream you see a person who died years ago, you see simply a person whose body, being worn out, could no longer be used by him on this stratum of life. Your spirit has eyes and ears, touch, taste, and smell. Its eyes can see 10,000 times farther than the eye of the body. Its other senses are infinitely superior. You are now using a very inferior set of senses. The eye of your body, compared with the eye of your spirit, is a mere peephole. The senses of the body are relatively coarse as compared with those of the spirit. They are for use in a relatively coarser stratum of life. You are better off in a coal mine with a coarse miner's suit than with one of silk or velvet. Your body, with its coarser senses, is for use in this, the coarser level of life. Yet it may be for you a possibility to slip off this suit, the body, and go with your spirit, leaving for a time the coarse suit behind, to a higher and finer order of life. You have now a clairvoyant eye and a clairaudient ear, but these are not open. The clairvoyant eye is closed like those of some animals in very early infancy. In a few persons it is opened prematurely and in advance of the other spiritual senses. This is a premature ripening. The clairvoyant eye is the spiritual eye. It is an eye put out at the end of a thought. Send your thought to London, and if clairvoyant, you send that eye with it. A clairaudient ear is an ear sent with a thought. Clairvoyance and clairaudience are not special gifts for particular people. They belong to all, and are in the germ in all. Your spiritual senses have been so crippled from birth, through lack of exercise, that they are not in working condition. When you leave your body at night, you are as a person in a dazed or bewildered state. You see without seeing. You hear without hearing. You are as one stunned by a sudden shock or blow. Then the spiritual eye may see, but it leaves no distinct memory of what it sees. You may in such state have a remembrance of a crowd of faces about you, but that is all. In a condition somewhat resembling this does your spirit roam about on slipping away from its body. You are as an infant just let out of doors. You go where a vague whim or fancy carries you. You have left the physical senses of sight, hearing, and touch in the body. You have now only a set of totally uneducated senses to guide you. You have been taught all your life to deny the very existence of these senses. To teach a child unbelief, say, in its hearing or eyesight, from its earliest consciousness will result in injury to its sight. The child educates itself gradually to use the senses of its body correctly. An infant has no idea of distance. It reaches out for things far from it, imagining they are near enough to be touched. It will walk off a precipice if left to itself. It learns by painful experience not to touch hot coals or hot iron. It requires years to educate it to a proper use of the physical senses. Your spirit has its own senses, which are not even recognized. They are left year after year without any exercise or training. You do not see, in what you call dreams, with the physical eye at all, or hear with the physical ear. You see with the spiritual eye. You hear with the spiritual ear. You are literally lost on going to sleep when you go into your spirit life. You then grope about like an infant with its untrained physical senses. What idea of the senses you do have, you estimate entirely by those of your body which you have left behind. You then carry your real selves about under the impression that you are still living in the mask you wear in the daytime, your body, and estimating and judging all you see or sense by a set of inferior senses, the physical, which you are not using at all. You are nightly, on passing out of the body, really in a spirit life, yet you are dead to this fact because you are using the spiritual senses as you use the physical in the daytime. You are as one using a crutch when you have two sound legs which need only practice to make you a good walker. Many people who are completely severed from their bodies are in precisely the same condition. You may go mostly when away from the body among these people. You may be attracted to them because your spirit has in its uneducated state been so long in the habit of blindly groping among them. Your spirit has fallen into this habit just as it, when using the body, falls into ruts of habit, which are often extremely difficult to break off. You see men daily drifting about without aim or purpose, waiting, hoping for something to turn up to amuse them. A man without aim or purpose in life soon becomes inferior in intellect. Your spiritual self is in the same condition, from a similar cause. It is often surrounded by others out of the body without aim or purpose, and who know not what to do with themselves. Fiction has never devised the picture literally realized every night among you. These thousands on thousands of blind beings freed temporarily from their bodies are straying, wandering, groping everywhere in your houses, your streets, your fields, some near, some far away. They are neither asleep nor awake. They wander as if in a dream, which is not a dream. Sometimes the spiritual eye opens, and they see acquaintance or stranger, seen familiar or unfamiliar. But the recognition is not always a satisfactory one. You have been unconsciously, and consciously in the case of many, taught not to believe in the reality of what you see in this state. Therefore, you do not accept it as a reality. And what the mind in any condition persistently refuses to accept as a reality will not frame itself to be held by memory as one. It is a fact that some people on the death of the body still think they have their physical bodies. They may remain in this state for years. They go about, eat, sleep, and live in every way in that grade of existence which, though unseen by us, is all about us. Because everything we see, hear, touch, handle, smell, or taste has on its grade its correspondent or spiritual counterpart, it can be used exactly as it is here. There are no sudden transitions of any sort in nature. People on passing from the physical body do not enter on any glorified condition of existence, unless they in mind are living such existence on earth. They go where everything is in strict correspondence with their daily thought. Friends in the unseen world may on their first arrival receive them as guests in their houses, but they are only guests and cannot remain in those circles unless in spirit they belong to them. If their thought be lower, they must, after a time, return to the order or stratum of thought in which they lived on passing out of the body. They cannot commence building upward on that. You must build your mansion in the skies yourself. You can commence consciously building it here in the body to greater advantage than to commence after you lose your body. That you must build it yourself is the law of nature. It is not because any individuality, however wise and powerful in any of the advanced stages of existence, says you must. All of these, up to orders of mind beyond our power to comprehend, have been and are now the builders of their temples, themselves. What most they want of us is to build in like manner our own and with the same blissful results, because such building is simply the building of our own individual happiness into grander, broader, and ever-broadening proportions. Your first error on passing from the body in the state known as sleep lies in thinking that you are moving about your physical body. You must educate yourself out of that mistake. You must fix it in your mind before going to sleep that if you wake up in what you call a dream, you are not then using your physical body. You will fix in your mind before going to sleep, so far as you can, your conception of yourself as a spirit, or, rather, as the unseen organization which during the day uses your body. The last thought before going to sleep is the one most likely to remain with you on leaving the body. If persisted in, you will find it mingling itself with what you call your dreams. That is, it will be the first clue towards the recognition of your real self when you are away from your body. Keep this fact, then, this recognition of yourself as a spirit, in your mind, and it will be a great help to your unseen friends in the other life to get near you and waken you to the knowledge of your real self. The wiser and more powerful order of spirits, who may be able to give you much of their thought in the daytime or while you are using the body, may not be able to give you so much of it during your escape from the body, owing to the condition before spoken of. Instead, therefore, of going into a higher region of thought at night, you descend, through blindness of mere force of habit, into a lower one. You may be, while using the body, educated up to and enter into their higher realm of thought by day. Yet at night, being so educated in part in the school of physical sense, you cannot carry that education with you. You walk with the spiritual eye and ear, thinking these the physical eye and ear. All this results in a confusion which no language can fully express, because no similar condition in this life can be clearly realized or illustrated. You want to give your powerful unseen